We begin our investigation with shocking news. After the death of Elvis Presley, investigators discovered that his body was exhausted not so much by physical illnesses as by the oppressive shadow of the past, which allowed them to open secret archives testifying to the true, hidden diagnosis of 1956: post-traumatic psychosis caused by blackmail and betrayal. It was during this period that his first major, hidden tragedy occurred: a car accident caused by the emotional state of this girl. This incident was immediately covered up by his friends, and all evidence disappeared. And here is our main suspect, Luisa Mendez, the woman who became the catalyst for this collapse. In her old house in Tupelo, investigators found a mutilated, corner-burnt diary, a broken glass with an unknown liquid, found near Elvis's bed during the crisis of 1956, 3 audio recordings, and a list of 42 missed calls from her to Elvis. Why did she, his love, become the prime suspect? Because she knew the truth. And here is the last entry, torn in two, from Luisa's diary. I feel such pain, not because he left, but because he allowed these shadows, these people, to take him. They said I would destroy him. But now I see, he destroyed himself. I'm only a witness to his slow suicide. Subscribe to the channel to see new investigations. Everything is just beginning. Episode 1. Cold Control. The Financial Shadow. When Colonel Parker temporarily stepped into the shadows, control over Elvis was taken over by close friends with mafia ties, those who financed his first major contracts. Luisa Mendez was spotted 100 meters from Elvis's estate 3 days before his nervous breakdown in 1956. But she wasn't going to him. She was waiting. These new friends, led by the fictitious Vincent Moretti, clearly explained to Elvis that marriage was a financial threat to their investment. They provided him with calculations. The estimated value of his market image was $29 million. They showed him a fictitious forecast according to which this value would drop by 40% immediately after the engagement announcement. This was pure, cold blackmail. The ultimatum was either her or we give you $100,000 cash and you get your first contract. This was control that forced Elvis to shut down all emotional mechanisms. Luisa knew he would make that choice, and that's why she was watching him. She wanted to be his nurse, but he rejected her. The financial backing turned out to be a cover for a deeper psychological game. Moretti acted not from behind the scenes, but openly, like an executive director reading a financial verdict. He insisted that the king must be a clean canvas for million-dollar fantasies, and a wife was a stain of paint. The pressure was so pervasive that Elvis began taking sleeping pills simply to avoid thinking about Luisa's wedding dress. Family wasn't just an obstacle. It was a financial virus that had to be destroyed in the bud. Episode 2. The Recordings. The Break. The Pain of the Comments. The real evidence in our case is the sound we found on the tapes. The first audio recording is a conversation between one of the friends and Elvis. You're spending like you're a tech billionaire, El. If you marry her, we're going bankrupt. She doesn't understand the business. She's dead weight. In the second, alarming recording, Elvis's voice is heard on the verge of a breakdown, shouting in response to the pressure. I can't do this. I promised her. And then Moretti mentions Elvis's unpaid bills. And then the sound of shattering glass. This was the sound corresponding to the broken glass with medicinal contents found near Elvis's bed. This was an emotional breakdown under the gun of blackmail. The friends financed their own luxurious lives by creating fictitious debts for Elvis. One of them could spend $400,000 annually on security. He had over 23 hidden SIM cards. Their previous financial losses were estimated at $50 million. They saw him as the only way to save themselves. This turned Elvis into a financial plaything. This audio drama reveals that Elvis's real drug was the fear of poverty, which they cleverly exploited. The sound of the glass is not just a physical incident. It is the sonic fingerprint of the moment his will finally broke. Moretti openly spoke of expenses, turning Elvis's personal life into a balance sheet. Financial blackmail was a sophisticated weapon. more effective than any bullet or knife. Was such an obsession with finances the cause of her despair? Write your opinion in the comments. The financial pain turned into personal pain. Episode 3. Silence. The Ultimatum. The Woman Enemy. In Luisa Mendez's diary, she wrote, "It wasn't just a rejection, it was an ultimatum. Marry or leave me, and these people will destroy your career." He chose silence. He couldn't look me in the eye. This relationship lasted until 1956. In Luisa's diary, we found a quote reflecting the position of the friends: "True art has no wife. Marriage is a limitation that kills the commodity." Torn pages from Luisa's diary testify to her constant trauma caused by the presence of other women. The friends deliberately created situations to prove to Elvis that he was free. Her entries even concerned the birth of his daughter, Lisa Marie, in June 1968. Luisa realized she became the cause of his first collapse, but he was to blame for allowing it to happen. Luisa describes how her name became synonymous with financial risk in Moretti circles. She wrote that she saw not love in Elvis's eyes, but constant fear of the mafia structure that surrounded him. The breakup with her was not a choice, but the execution of a contract sealed not by blood, but by the fear of bankruptcy. Luisa Mendez became the woman enemy for the entire financial machine that fed on Elvis's body. All her letters to Elvis were returned unopened, stamped, "Return as sender." Recipient not interested in financial risk. She recalled how his managers even forged her signature on documents, allegedly confirming her consent to let him go. What tormented Luisa most was that Elvis never sent her a penny or a letter, demonstrating complete submission to the will of the friends. She felt not just abandoned, but erased from his history by a financial directive. But before we reveal Luisa's last word in this diary, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next, even more shocking investigations. Transition to the physical and psychological vulnerability of the victim. Episode 4. Body and Soul. The Struggle with the Shadow. Young Elvis in the hospital in 1956. His soul was deteriorating. What tormented him most was not exhaustion, but the realization that he lived his life not for himself, but for the business that owned him. His later problems, bulimia, food addiction, he could eat over 20,000 calories in one sitting, were psychologically connected to this first, unbearable pain. His body was rapidly deteriorating. The third audio recording, made by Luisa, contains only his quiet, drunken sigh. "This world is too beautiful. I don't want to leave this life, but I can't stay. I chose the wrong road." This is about the life he was forced to abandon. The physical crisis of 1956 was a direct, immediate consequence of the emotional blackmail by Moretti and his friends. This episode became his first, hidden attempt to escape reality, which later turned into an addiction to medication. He never fully recovered after being forced to give up the only pure love he craved. His exhaustion was not medical, but existential, a sentence he passed on himself for betrayal. Even in the hospital, he asked for a photo of Luisa, but the friends forbade it, replacing it with a new movie script. He felt that his body was just a shell that belonged to the studios, not to him. It was here, in the ward under the guise of the flu, that the real split of his personality occurred. Doctors recorded unexplained tachycardia and high blood pressure, which were a reaction to psychological terror. His rapid recovery was as suspicious as the hospitalization itself, planned to hide the true reason for the breakdown. This 1956 incident was the prologue to 1977, but no one wanted to read those lines. Mentions of Tupelo became a trigger for his pain, forcing him to avoid his hometown for many years. His performances subsequently became even more aggressive and desperate, as if he was trying to exorcise an inner demon through music. He began to exhibit classic signs of PTSD, masked as star-eccentric behavior. The only true painkiller for him remained the stage, where for a brief time he could feel like the king, not a financial asset. The hospital record itself contained the phrase, "Patient refuses food due to personal protest." Episode 5. Interrogation. Silence. The final truth. We summoned Luisa Mendez for questioning in 2025. The interrogation lasted almost 8 hours. When she emerged, she was 10 years older, but she did not shed a single tear. She stated, "I lost him long before he left this world. I was his only chance for normalcy. But he chose gold. I'm not his killer. I'm his conscience." Investigators recorded 42 missed calls. The official conclusion: Elvis's death was natural. But his daughter, Lisa Marie, would say, "Dad died in Tupelo. The rest was just a slow agony." Luisa returns home, takes a glass of clean water, and looks at an old, yellowed photograph of a young, smiling Elvis. The suspect, who turned out to be the only real victim. During the interrogation, Luisa recalled that her last words to Elvis were a plea to forgive him for what he had done to himself. Her eerie calm was not indifference, but the wisdom of a person who had long mourned not only him, but also her own fate. Investigators found no physical evidence, but they found a soul that witnessed a tragedy spanning decades. Her final return home was not a step towards rest, but towards eternal imprisonment in the memories of Tupelo. In her safe, Luisa kept only one thing: the keys to the house in Tupelo that Elvis once gave her, saying it was their first real home. The investigative department officially recognized psychological coercion as the cause of the 1956 hospitalization, but legally, it had no bearing on the 2025 case. Moretti and his companions were already dead, taking their secrets to the grave, but their shadow remained. Luisa insisted that her 42 calls were not an attempt to win him back, but a desperate attempt to warn him of the threat. She knew those calls would be used against her, but she didn't stop trying to reach the man she loved. When Luisa left the police station, the rain began washing the dust from the city streets for the first time in a week, but not from her memory. When asked if she would change anything in the past, she replied only one thing: "I would never have allowed him to become a king." This story is not just about Elvis. It is a philosophical monologue about power, finance, and love in show business. Elvis became a victim of his own success. His fate is proof that fame is not light. It is a giant shadow. It hides not only his death, it hides his soul. When the friends forced him to choose between Luisa and millions, they were not protecting his market image. They desold him. They killed the young man from Tupelo. And for this, they will never be forgiven, even if they escape justice. It was a crime committed in the name of financial gain. Subscribe to the channel to see new stories about Elvis Presley.